You are watching DHTV from California State University, Dominguez Hills.
Thank you all for assembling bright and early here on the West Side for what we think will be a very exciting program for you this morning. My name is Bill Allen. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, and on behalf of all my colleagues on the staff and board of the LADC, it's my pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to our latest Future Forum, this one on the future of retail and consumerism. And we hope that you'll actually all join us in our online conversation this morning by using the hashtag LAEDC Future Forum so that we can share some of what we've learned this morning with an even broader audience throughout our region and the world. The LADC, for those of you who don't know, works to advance opportunity and prosperity for all residents of the Los Angeles region. We do this by providing collaborative economic development leadership to promote a strong, diverse, and sustainable LA County economy, to improve the health and well-being of all of our LA County residents, and to be sure that each and every one of them can meet their basic human need for a job. Our efforts are guided and supported by the expertise and counsel of our business, government, and education members and partners. Many of you in this room are members of the LADC, and we're grateful for that membership. If this is your first time with us, we hope you enjoy today's program and will connect with us and become civic stewards alongside so many others who are working to raise standards of living for all of LA County's residents. Today's forum on the future of retail is presented as part of our commitment to helping us all better understand our regional economy and the forces at play within it, because we believe that the better we know our economy, the better able we will be to grow our economy. For 37 years, the LAEDC has been harnessing the power of the private sector in collaboration with our public and education sectors here in LA County to guide economic development and create more broadly shared prosperity. To that end, in 2015, the LAEDC led the second ever consensus-built strategic plan for economic development. We facilitated conversations with more than 500 regional stakeholder groups across LA County. The goal was to create a consensus plan that would unite business and labor and government and education, environmental communities, faith-based communities, homeowner groups, neighborhood councils, all in a series of strategies that would elevate standards of living and more broadly share opportunity and prosperity in this abundant region of Los Angeles. Today, that is known as Propel LA. Propel LA is moving this region forward with hundreds of those same stakeholder organizations taking responsibility for different elements of the plan, and we invite you to visit propel.la and learn more about how you can be part of a team to help advance the interests of this regional economy for the benefit of all of our neighbors that we share this region with. As I said, today's forum on the future of retail is part of our effort to enhance our collective understanding of this regional economy, of our key industry sectors, how they're being transformed by powerful forces like big data, social media, artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, automation, and robotics, just to name a few. Like many of our thriving industries in Los Angeles County, retail finds itself at a crossroads, facing disruption enabled by many of these technological innovations. And even in the face of these forces that continually drive more consumers to online or mobile purchases, retail remains a significant and fast-growing provider of jobs throughout LA County. The best retailers, the ones who know their customers the best, the ones who are committed to enhancing the experience that they provide them, are separating themselves from the pack. And retail masterminds like Rick Caruso are continually innovating, creating and refining spaces where the best retailers can congregate and offer their customers a distinctive, personal, and memorable experience that will enhance their brand loyalty. Mr. Caruso's signature properties, the Grove and the Americanet brand, which by the way celebrates its 10th anniversary this evening in Glendale, are not only the most frequently visited places in all of Los Angeles County, but they are among this nation's most successful retail destinations by many metrics. So we are thrilled that Rick is here with us this morning to share his insights into how this industry is evolving. Rick will be followed by a panel of experts who will touch on the integration of technology and e-commerce, experiential retail, social media influencers, and how the industry's workforce of the future will need to be equipped for success. We're grateful, as always, to our LADC Executive Committee member and presenting sponsor, California State University, Dominguez Hills, for serving as this Future Forum Series presenting sponsor, because they had the foresight to recognize the power of bringing these conversations to all of you so that, again, we could better understand the forces at play and act on them for the benefit of our region and our residents. So I want to particularly thank the president of Cal State Dominguez Hills, Willie Hagan, and his entire team for their investment in this enlightenment of our region, and I'll introduce him more formally in just a moment. But first, I also want to thank another of our sponsors and key thought partners, and that is Susan Stone and Mike Quindazzi from PricewaterhouseCoopers. PwC has been committed to helping us provide cutting-edge data and insights for all of you in this process so that we can better understand these key industries that drive our regional economy. They continue to provide this entire series of forums with the unparalleled expertise provided by their extraordinary team of researchers and consultants. So we want to thank them both for enhancing our quest for knowledge that we can share with all of you and the broader public. Before we get our program started, I'd also like to acknowledge our host, the Water Garden, for this beautiful space we have to congregate this morning. And I'd actually like to invite to the stage Pat McCroskey, Managing Director of CBRE, who manages this facility, to say a few words of welcome to you. Please welcome Pat McCroskey.
Good morning, everybody. Beautiful day outside. On behalf of our ownership, JP Morgan and their investors, just want to thank you for joining us and welcome to the Water Garden. The Water Garden is about a 1.3 million square foot creative office development, and we have gone through a major redevelopment over the past year and a half. We are home to some of the greatest tenants in the Southern California market: Amazon, Oracle, Sony, AMC, Wells Fargo. So we've got a wonderful list of tenants here. Please come on outside afterwards. As I just said, we've gone through a major re-imaging of the project. We took a lake that was out here. If any of you were out here before, this was a beautiful scenic area that had about 500,000 gallons of water that were lakes out there. As part of our sustainability to the community, as part of our redesign, we took that $500,000 gallons of water, we turned it into 40,000 gallons of water and re-imaged this out here. 90% of our outside area when we had the lake out there was unusable area. It was beautiful to look at, but not a lot of places to sit. Now 90% of our area outside is usable. So when you finish today, please come on outside, enjoy our luxury seating out there, sit by the fire pits, walk along the river's edge. You'll really enjoy it. But welcome today, and it's going to be a great program. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pat. Thank you, Pat, and to all your colleagues at CBRE and to JP Morgan, who is a huge global force, by the way, in not only promoting economic development and workforce development, but the power of linking them together to create more prosperity and more opportunity for more people in our societies around the globe. And that's particularly why I'm delighted to be able to now introduce to you our founding partner in this series of Future Forums, our presenting sponsor for the entire series, and that is Cal State University Dominguez Hills. CSU Dominguez Hills is a diverse, welcoming community of learners and educators collaborating to change lives and communities for the better. With strong academic programs, dedicated faculty members and mentors, supportive staff, and many campus amenities, CSU Dominguez Hills is committed to connecting students to a high-quality and transformative education while providing our communities and our regional economy with the vital resource for talent, knowledge, skills, and leadership needed to thrive today and tomorrow. And so I hope you'll join me in a very warm welcome to the 10th president of this extraordinary institution, a man who's given his entire professional life to enhancing and educating the lives of others, to enabling the opportunity for tens of thousands of students of the institutions that he has led to benefit from those institutions and find their own piece of prosperity in this region, as I said, of real abundance. He's a man who will soon enjoy a well-deserved retirement from higher education and from this very noble profession of higher education. And so I hope you'll join me in a really rousing round of applause and appreciation for this 10th president of Cal State Dominguez Hills, a great friend and supporter of the LADC and the work we all do together, President Willie Hagan.
Well, thank you. So yes, I am retiring. I have 2 more months and then I relax. I've been doing this for almost 40 years and people say, can you do it another 4 or 5 and stay on? And the answer is, yes, I can, but I'm not. You've got to make a decision on when it's right for you to step off. I tell people I have a grandchild, and if you don't have a grandchild, you don't understand the tremendous magnetic pull that they have in your life. So as much as I enjoy talking and seeing all of you, I will enjoy more hanging out with my 10-year-old granddaughter. But you do get reflective when you're going to retire. You sort of reflect back on all the things that got you to where you are. You reflect back on the battles you fought, the ones you won, the ones you lost. But one of the things that I found myself reflecting about on even more were the various partnerships that you engaged in over the course of your career. And you know, the people who were strangers to you when you first got started and then later became your friends. And one of the partnerships that I'm most proud of is the one here with LEEDC. I didn't really know much about LEEDC until I came to this region, but it's a great organization, has a fantastic mission, a solid strategic plan to get there, and under the leadership of Bill and his staff, you know, you couldn't ask for a better organization. So in reflecting on the partnerships that have benefited the university and benefited me personally, this is one of the ones that I really look back on. So this forum is going to be the 8th in terms of the total that we will sponsor with LEEDC. And as Bill mentioned, we've done them on cybersecurity, entertainment, healthcare, robotics and artificial intelligence, the future of work. I think today is the future of retail. We're going to do one on the future of transportation. And all of these fields were sort of the intersection of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and how they're impacting all these areas, these so-called STEM fields. And so someone asked me, so why would Dominguez Hills sponsor these particular workshops? Well, the STEM fields, as many of you know, are projected to be the fastest growing fields in terms of job growth in the next 10 to 20 years. They're also projected to have the highest income growth. But these fields also have the lowest participation of women and minorities. And our university is almost 70% female and 85% underrepresented minorities. So if we're going to, you know, help execute our mission, help transform our students' lives and give them an opportunity to be a part of, you know, the growing economy, then we have to know what's happening in the future, because not only are these topics that you're hearing about critical to the success of this region, but as an institution of higher education, we have to sit back and determine where should we put in our time and our efforts in terms of educational development. So it's critical that we also know where things are going so that our students can contribute and take advantage of the future of this economy. And the only thing I will say is that as you listen to these topics and you listen to how technology is radically transforming so many things, one of the things that become clear to me in education is that, and you know this as well, there are a lot of divides still in this country. And one of the things that I'm concerned about is that as we, as leaders of industry, education, politics, business, that as we look at these things, that we try to make sure that our efforts mitigate or lessen the divides that exist between people and communities. Because again, if we have a future where we are not pulled together by the changes, it's not going to be a great future. And I think part of education is not just about transforming lives, it's about bringing people together in terms of greater understanding. So this partnership, these forums, in my mind, are a great opportunity for us to engage in those discussions, but also to keep in mind, how can we make sure that as the world is changing, that we play a role in making sure that no one is left behind in that. So again, thank you very much, and I enjoy being here, and I'm looking forward to this topic. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, now I am very pleased to be able to introduce a dear friend as our keynote speaker this morning. Rick Caruso is a nationally renowned, visionary industry leader with award-winning destinations that attract millions of guests and create thousands of local jobs for our residents. Destinations like the Grove, the Americana at Brand, the Waterside at Marina Del Rey, the Commons at Calabasas, and so many more have created extraordinary opportunities for all of us to enjoy a great quality of life here, but also to advance our economic interests as a region. And wait till you see his new Palisades Village that he'll tell you a little bit about this morning that's opening in September. Rick is also a great civic steward who was the youngest ever president of the Board of Water and Power Commissioners in the city of Los Angeles. He was also the president of the Los Angeles Police Commission when he brought us one of the great police chiefs in our city's history, Bill Bratton. He's a very generous and active philanthropist in our communities. He's a longtime supporter of the LAEDC. Back in 2006, he won our Eddie Award for his own contributions to economic development across this region. His eponymous firm, Caruso, is nationally recognized, one of the largest and most widely admired firms in the retail industry in the U.S. today. He is regularly sought out to provide his insights to audiences around the country on where this industry is headed. So we're particularly grateful that he's here with us this morning to share those insights. Please join me in welcoming the CEO and founder of Caruso, our good friend, Mr. Rick Caruso.
That was very, very generous of you. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me here. I'm going to take my watch off so I can keep track of time. Is that my countdown? Okay, well then I don't have to take my watch off to keep track. Bill and I go way back. Bill and I were in high school together. We went to college together. Our wives are best friends. Our children are best friends. And so the best part about life is spending your time with people that you love and admire, and I love and admire Bill. And this organization is so lucky to have somebody like him as the leader. You've changed Los Angeles County, Bill, Los Angeles City, and we're just grateful for all your service. So thank you so much. A little round of applause for Bill here. I don't think he gets enough credit he deserves. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about what we're doing, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of my thoughts about the future of retail, and then I'm going to open it up for some questions, because I'm really more interested in what you have to say to me and what comments you have or what questions you have. That helps inform me of what we need to do as a company moving forward. But I just want to start out by telling you that the future of retail is bright, that brick and mortar is healthy. It's more than it will just survive, it will thrive. Now, you may say that's a selfish statement because I'm in that business, but that's not true. We are data-driven, and we track the data very closely. So let me give you some data that's tracked not only by independent third parties, but also Green Street, who we rely on, because we compare our performance against that of the publicly traded REITs that are in the same sector. Here's what we do. We develop the highest quality properties. We redefined every asset class. We strive to provide unparalleled guest service. We have strong community relations, and we always own and we never sell. We have never sold a project that we have built. We have no outside partners or investors. We do everything in our balance sheet, and we take a 100-year view of the asset that we're building. That was a big discussion yesterday, as a matter of fact, up on the Miramar site was our 100-year view on the investment we're making and the quality of the investment. So here's some metrics reported by Green Street and others. 92% of the people that step on our property make a purchase. The average mall in the United States is 50%. We have 2 times the amount of volume. Our growth rate with the retailers is 3 times that of the indoor malls. And the industry average for sales per square foot is over 2 times. The Grove is tracking at $2,200 a foot. The average mall is under $400. The Americana is at $1,700 a foot, and it's in the top 15 best shopping centers in the world. We take great pride in my team of saying that we are the only development company that has 2 properties listed by Fortune in the top 15 in the world. 2017 was our best year ever. 2018, we're on track to outperform 2017. Our company has grown at an annual CAGR of 19% since inception, even in the midst of the worst recessions. So, here's a little bit about leasing. Our properties are 100% leased across the portfolio. We are fortunate enough to have a waiting list to get in. We actually spend more time de-leasing than leasing. When we believe a retailer or a restaurateur has lost its mojo, for lack of a better word, we want that space back, because every square inch of that space and every door on our property becomes a critical component of creating the energy on the site that we want to have. In terms of retail productivity, sales per square foot, I don't know if you saw the article this morning in the Wall Street Journal talking about malls in Australia and how they're getting impacted by Amazon, and the big metric is sales per square foot. There was another big article yesterday by Bloomberg on the concern that the big REITs are having on reported sales per square foot because of the impact of returns from online purchases. We're the highest in the industry, reported by Green Street. Our average sales per square foot across our portfolio is $1,200 a foot, and like I said, the average mall is just under $400 a foot. So our flagship property, one of them, is the Grove. I hope most of you or some of you have been to the Grove. If you haven't, come on in my car as I leave, and I'll take you there today. You can be my guest. The Grove is an incredible little machine, but I want to give you one interesting metric out of the Grove. And again, we do have a waiting list to get in the Grove, which is great. The movie theater. And why do I point out the movie theater? Because the movie theater highlights that retail is a commodity. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Same movies, same popcorn, same Raisinets as every other movie theater. The number one theater in revenue per seat, not in the city, not in the county, not in the state, in North America. Why? It's because of the experience. From the minute you get out of your car, to walking into the movie theater, to how you're greeted, to the environment around you. And that's what makes the difference in creating wonderful retail and just a wonderful experience. So we're in the business of creating these intimate streets and these intimate places that we take such great pride in. They're fun to do. I think I'm in one of the greatest businesses because I get to create environments that actually get populated by diverse sections of the community, which we love. So what I care about doing every day is creating something that is so unique, that is so relevant, that is so consistent, and that relates to our customers so well that it's almost impossible for people to duplicate, and they're compelled to return. We focus on the guest. All of you are not my customer when you show up on my property. My customer is Nordstrom, my customer is Tiffany, my customer is Barnes & Noble, and that's a whole separate mindset of serving our customer to drive their revenue. When you step on my property, you're my guest. So what's the guest experience that we want to have for you? That's a different lens of how you look at things. Why at the Grove can you come to our little park that's the size of a postage stamp that's always full, and now we give you a blanket so you can lay down and be more comfortable? And one of the younger people in the office said, what if they steal the blanket? And I said, fantastic. It has our logo on it. They'll take it home and they'll constantly think about us. It's an evolving approach. Somebody asked me last night, I was at an event, what would you have done differently at the Grove? Number one thing, you can always do things better. We should have added residential. So when we got out to Glendale at the Americana brand, we added residential. We reinvented how residential, how apartments operate in terms of services. We operate it like a five-star hotel. Our rental rates out there are 30% above the competing market. And again, the retail does $1,700 a foot, which is spectacular. And people also ask, why did you go to Glendale? These were 4 city blocks that were run down south of Glendale. Most of the great retail and restaurants, as you know, had gone to Pasadena. How does Glendale get it back? Glendale got it back because they were a partner with us in assembling the land and supporting us to build this project. And this was a tough project to build. If you remember, we're celebrating our 10th anniversary today. We're having a little party tonight. So in about 12 hours, I'm going to be feeling pretty good. But with Bill, this is a project that the Next Door Mall, owned by General Growth, they tried to stop us at the city council. They sued us. We went to every court in the state of California, including the Supreme Court, and won. Then they went for a referendum. We won the referendum. Then they started blocking tenants by telling tenants that if they come to the Americana, they can't get into any of their malls. We sued them for antitrust. They're used to doing that. That's their MO. Indoor malls hate to compete. When you're dying, it's tough to compete. So their business plan is to stop competition. We won. We built it. Before we put a shovel in the ground, we had $20 million invested into this project, fighting General Growth to get our entitlements. It was a massive bet. I wouldn't have made that bet if the city of Glendale hadn't been our partner through the whole thing. They were worried we were going to walk away. We shook hands and said, we're sticking with this. So tonight is really a celebration of mass proportions. The mall is doing better because there's now synergies between us. We're doing great, and the city of Glendale is doing great. So it's really a wonderful case study of how government and private sector should work together. We like curating experiences. So I gave a speech about 5-6 years ago at the National Retail Federation back in New York, and I made this prediction, which became controversial, that the indoor mall is dead unless completely reinvented. What we're seeing today in the industry, and I don't say that with great pride, I say that actually with sadness because it affects my industry. But what we're seeing is declining traffic, declining sales of indoor malls. They have so much space, it's become much more of a carnival of retail. We like curating things. When we build something, a traditional indoor mall is about 1.5 million square feet. We're building at about 600,000 square feet. So we have the luxury of taking our time, finding the right tenants, curating them, whether they're retailers or restaurateurs, and putting them in, rather than being forced to fill space to report earnings. We are not space fillers. And we provide destinations, and dining has become an important destination, as you all know. I look at what will facilitate demand, not what will accept demand, but what's going to facilitate it. And every door we have on our properties is precious, and every retailer and every restaurateur has to create and generate demand and traffic rather than just feed off of it. And we're very precise and very data-driven about who we want at our properties. If you go to the Americana brand today, I think it's some of the best dining in the region. We have an amazing lineup of restaurants out there. And the transaction becomes an experience. That's what we're all about. Now, the only thing I will tell you, I think the word experience gets overused now. It's used by everybody. You got to create an experience. You know, they think you put a coffee shop inside a bookstore, all of a sudden you have an experience. That's not what it's about. That's a lazy way of approaching it. It has to be at every point, at every experience, at every juncture. You have to focus on what is that guest experience and making it pleasant. I want you to come onto our properties. I want you to feel transformed, that you're in a better time and place, you're in a happier place, and you're more relaxed, and you feel safe. What is the definition of what I do? This is something we should always ask ourselves, right? Because somehow, as companies and individuals, we get defined by other terms, and we get locked into this bunker. Remember the bunker of Maginot in World War II? They built this great bunker. They thought they were completely protected. And what did the enemy do? They never attacked the bunker. They went around the bunker. So if all of us get defined and we live in a bunker in our business, competition is going to go around you. They don't even have to compete with you. So I want a big platform. I want to make it tough for my competition to go around me. So how we define our business, we're not in the retail business. We're not in the hotel business. We're not in the residential business. We're not in the office business. We're in the business of enriching lives. That's what everything is tested against. Are we building a product that will actually enrich lives and give back to the community and become part of the fabric of the community, so once it opens, it looks seamless, and it's relevant, and it's complementary to the lifestyle around us. That's what we focus on. If I sat back and said, we're going to build a really productive retail center, I would build a straight strip mall that you see. I'd put a market on one side, a drugstore on the other side, and a whole bunch of stuff in the middle. That was the model for years. When we went out to the promenade at Westlake, we built it on a curve. Everybody thought we were crazy. I probably was. I didn't know the rules. So I didn't know what I was breaking. I didn't know what I was changing. I didn't think I was innovative. I just thought it made sense to stand here and look around. That would drive me down the front of all that retail space and then make it pretty. Who doesn't like things that are pretty, right? But things were built straight, as I learned, because it's less expensive. You don't have to form a curve. So I think if all of us in our business, and I have to constantly challenge myself and challenge my associates in the office that I love working with, to constantly try to push ourselves and be a little bit over our skis in how we're thinking about enriching lives and sort of twisting things around a little bit. Here's one of the ways we do it. It's called giving the gift of time. There's a concept that I have called the second shift. The second shift is all of us work all day long. On the way home, we stop at the market, we pick up some food, we pick up our cleaning, we stop and get some gas. Maybe on the way to work, we're getting our car washed. All of those things that take away critical time. And then we have this silly little thing called an iPhone that somehow we become enslaved to, that we feel compelled we have to respond immediately to, right? How do I give you back time? Because if I can give you back time, I think you're going to like hanging out with us, right? If you're at our retail centers with our concierge, if you're in our offices with our concierge, we take your car, we get it fueled, we get it washed, we pick up your laundry, we go grocery shopping for you. We put it in our refrigerators and it's put in your trunk right before you go home. We do everything for you. You need your guitar tuned, we get it tuned for you. There almost isn't a request that our concierge doesn't handle on the residential, on the retail, and on the office. We were rated the #1 concierge by the Wall Street Journal. We beat everybody. Four Seasons, Waldorf, you name them. We were rated #1. And that happens only because we're in the business of enriching lives and nothing else. And that's what matters to us. We're having a celebration tonight, as I said, but we try to celebrate every day. We like celebrating the community around us. We like infusing a lot of life into our properties. Miley Cyrus yesterday performed at the Grove. She did a surprise pop-up. We have more things happening on our properties. At the Grove and the Americana alone, there are 350 events per year on those properties, all free of charge. And here's the trick. People will talk about experiences, but we never attach a cash register. Because if you do, it's no longer an experience. It's a transaction. You take a look at the trolley of the Grove. It goes 1,600 feet. 1,600 feet. Who's in government here before I put my foot in my mouth? Okay, so I'm going to apologize in advance. Thanks to the state of California, it has to be a licensed railroad. I'm serious. Those trolley conductors are licensed train engineers that we have to have. The trolley at the Americana and the Grove are the two shortest railroads in the United States. They are. Okay. Here's a statistic. I say use data. I'm making this up, but prove me wrong. I move more people per mile than any railroad in the world. That's my statistic, right? We move millions of people a year, literally, on both of those. Folks, it doesn't go anywhere. And you know exactly where it's stopping and where you're coming back to. But it's that little thing that's an experience. If I would have charged $0.25, I would have made a lot of money. Whole different message I'm sending you. The blanket on the park, the free trolley ride, what I'm trying to tell you is, I care about you. I like you. I want you to be here. I want you to enjoy your day. And I want you to be my guest. Guest doesn't come with a price tag. So what we care about is market share that I told you earlier, gave you those metrics. I also care about heart share. Have I made an emotional connection with you? Because if I have your heart, you're going to return over and over again. We got into the office building business. If you've been out to the Americana brand, we bought the old Masonic Temple. It had been empty for about 50 years. There was no windows, there was no elevator, there was no water, there was no power, there was no air conditioning. It was built in 1929. Gorgeous building, got together with CBRE, with Lou Horn. We had this crazy idea, I'll buy it, we'll fix it up, lease it back to him. And he said, well, that's a great idea, but it's 20 minutes farther than our centroid of where we need to be. We need to be in Burbank. I said, fair enough. You spend the extra 20 minutes, I'll give everybody in your company an hour back, right? You'll be net 40. And he said, that's impossible. I said, let's do it. We have every service. Every employee of CBRE at no cost can call our concierge. We do everything for them. All the things I talked to you about, plus more. In addition to being right across from the Americana brand, we set up dinners for their families. We set up movie for the families, for the wives coming over. We have business programs. We have translation services that we provide. All of it is free. So I'm giving people back time. It's an amazing office. If you haven't seen it, you should see what Gensler and Lou Horn created there. It's absolutely spectacular. The other important part of the story, again, is the partnership with the city of Glendale out there. I went to the city manager at the time, said we have an opportunity to bring in a world-class corporate headquarters. I have to put Lou Horn's, CBRE's employees in a desk in 9 months. I have a landmark status building with no windows, and we got to get it done. The city manager at the time said, I got it. I got your back. We started construction on a handshake with Lou. We didn't even get the lease signed, and we moved them in 9 months, and they were in their desk. Completely revamped that building. It was a spectacular effort by our design construction team and the city of Glendale and CBRE. Quickly on residential, what we're getting into, this is 8,500. Listed by Bloomberg as the most expensive building to live in outside of New York City. It's all rental. We don't sell anything, as I said. We have a waiting list to get in here. We are averaging $10 per square foot on rent. We operate it like a hotel, including room service for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We have poolside service. You can have a glass of wine or eat while you're laying by the pool on the top deck. Based on that success, we have entitled through the city of Los Angeles right across the street, where my first project was built, 333 South La Cienega, where Loman's was. It will be a 17-story high-rise with 145 luxury residential units, which we're very excited to start next year. So the future of retail, quickly. Humans have never changed. Unless you know somebody I don't know, they've never changed. The early man and woman sitting around a campfire dictates what we like in our life. They sat around a campfire because they wanted to feel warm, they wanted to feel a sense of community, they wanted to feel safe, they wanted camaraderie. That's the same way as we are today. The internet is never going to affect places that create wonderful experiences for people. The Champs-Élysées, which I was at the other day, I was in Europe, is crowded as ever. The restaurants and the retail around it are packed. Same with Skegi Market. Nothing is going to pack that because of the unique experience it provides. So let me just be clear on this, though, which I've said on CNBC and at the Milken Conference. Amazon is the best thing that's happened to retail. That sounds inconsistent with somebody in brick and mortar, but it's not. Amazon is now going to brick and mortar. Warby Parker, that started on the online, is now going to brick and mortar. If you're going to be successful in retail, you have to have both formats. It's a hybrid model. But the most important thing about Amazon is it's retaught us what's truly important. Know your customer. Service your customer the way they want to be serviced. Provide the right experience. We've just done 2 deals with Amazon. One is going into the Pacific Palisades, our new project up there. One is going down to the marina. They are genius on how they do their business because every store is tailored to that community. Why do retailers think if you open a store in LA, the product should be the same as you open a store in Milwaukee? It's crazy. What's killing brick and mortar is bad retailers. When was the last time you woke up and wanted to go in a Toys R Us store? When my kids were young, it used to be exciting. Now it's a dump. Are they going out of business? Sure. They actually deserve to go out of business. That's part of the evolution. You either need to be relevant, you either need to be good at what you're doing, or you need to move on. And that's what Amazon has taught us. There's a great visual here. Remember the Sears building in Chicago? I think it's another name now. It's an insurance company and whatnot. But the visual still, it always hits me. Sears built the tallest building in the United States. And even from that vantage point, they never saw Walmart coming. They were in this bunker, right? You have to wake up every morning and be worried about what you do because you're in a commodity business. Anybody can do it. And the only way you can change that is you wrap it in an experience and you service your customer the way they want to be serviced. That's my swim lane. If your swim lane is straight, you're going to miss the customer. Swim to where the customer is. Why worry about the rules? There are no rules. Follow what you like. I bet most of you go to the same restaurant, the same store, because people know you and they treat you well. It's not more complicated than that. What's next? Real quick, I'll wrap it up. We're getting into the hotel business. We're under construction up in Montecito with the Miramar Hotel. That's a hotel that's been there for 100 years. We got fully entitled. We knocked it down. We open at the end of this year. Actually, January 7th will be our first day to the public. Bill and I are going to have dinner there at the end of the year, all by ourselves with our families, hopefully. We're going to have a small little dinner party. It's going to be spectacular. The only five-star hotel actually on a beach in Southern California. And the beach is private. So we're going to get to have dinners on the beach and a little glass of wine on the beach. And we're building it as a home, and we're going to be welcoming your home. We're challenging every rule of the hotel business. So in about a year, I'll tell you whether or not that was a good idea or a bad idea. And the last thing we're doing, which we're under construction on now, and this is Palisades Village. We have this remarkable opportunity that rarely gets handed to a developer to actually buy most of a downtown in one of the greatest communities in the United States, Pacific Palisades, and reinvent it from the ground up. This whole project is the size of East Hampton coming up at once. 3 stories of underground parking, bringing back the Bay Theater that used to be there in the 50s. People from the Huntington, the Alphabet Streets, and around the Palisades will be able to walk to the movies and walk to dinner. We're building a park. This is going to open September 22nd. We're 90% leased. This whole project, the square footage can fit inside of the Nordstrom building at the Grove, but it will have twice as many stores. It's a completely different model that we're inventing, highly curated, highly efficient, very small, very tailored to the surrounding community. And I think it's going to be the new wave of what should be happening in retail, but it's going to be such an important part of this community, and we're so committed to being a good neighbor in this community, and we're really excited about it. If you ever want to take a tour while we're still under construction, we'd be happy to arrange that. So thank you for having me here. I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
Rick has graciously agreed to take some questions, so while we have him here for a few more minutes before he has to get back down to the Grove, I'd love to invite, I think we have some microphones. Oh, hang on, there's someone who already has put their hand up as a mic, and then there's another question here, if we can bring him on, another question here. Please.
Hi, Rick. Thank you so much. Amber Martinez from LA's Best.
Hi.
Excited to hear a little bit more at some point, I'm sure, about the 100-year outlook of your properties, particularly around the fact that I represent 25,000 elementary school students here in Los Angeles. So curious, from your standpoint, what are the competencies that you'll be seeking for those future jobs the next, say, 20 years?
Is that the question?
It is.
You know, education, as we all know, is the most important thing, and we've got to do a lot better job, and it's great what you're doing in the field of education. I look at the people that are the most talented in my company, and we are a big hirer of younger people, constantly focusing on the bench. We've had a head of retail nationally that was 28 years old, a lady, started as an intern in our company and worked her way to the top. We have the head of the Grove, the CEO of the Grove effectively is 28 years old. Most of our assistant VPs, executive VPs, are in their 20s and their early 30s. A good education was important. A graduate degree is wonderful. I highly recommend it. I think the most important part of an education for me and the people who are the most successful, who have the permission to be creative and think out of the box. And somehow in schools, the schools that really focus on the creativity and tapping into the strength of what that individual child has to build up their confidence in whatever it may be, ends up being not only the smartest people to work with, but the people that are most fun. And that's a big component in our company. We only want to hire people that really, truly enjoy life and has family as their first priority, because then that sort of settles everything and puts all the priorities in place.
While we're getting the mic to the next question, can you talk about Operation Progress? Is that
Sure.
what you're making it-
So thank you, Bill. Operation Progress is a program down in Watts that I've been involved with. I won't spend the time on the whole history, but it's a program that puts together LAPD officers and kids who are living in the projects, Nickerson Gardens, Imperial Gardens, in the worst circumstances. 20 minutes from here, there's kids that have to go to sleep on the floor because they worry about a bullet coming through the window at night. These kids wake up every day and they go to some incredible schools, mostly the Catholic system. Bourbon Day, St. Lawrence, et cetera down there, St. Mary's down in Inglewood. These cops become their mentors. They make sure they wake up. They make sure they get their homework done. They make sure they do well. We now have 80 kids in the system that we support. They started 3rd grade. We now have kids at Columbia, USC, Harvard, Yale. Young lady that I just fell in love with got a full scholarship at Boston College, and she wants to be a doctor. This was a girl a year ago that was sleeping on the floor because of bullet holes coming through. And we've got to change that. But it's these LAPD officers, they are the unsung heroes in that community, and they don't get the credit that they deserve. But look up Operation Progress. It's pretty impressive.
Okay. Hi, I'll
Hi.
stand in the set. Hi, I'm Lori Ivas from Santa Monica College, and I wanted to thank you for being here. Thank Elsa and Ilsa for allowing my fashion students, retail students
Right.
to come. But I personally wanted to thank you because I stare at the Palisades going up every weekend. I'm Santa Monica member, St. Monica's. Thank you for Holy Grounds.
Yeah.
I mean, no, seriously, it's like you really do create experiences, and
Thank you.
and the aesthetics. We teach fashion and marketing and merchandising, and you've accomplished that. And I just wanted to say that.
Oh,
Just
thank you so
really
much. I
appreciate
really
it.
appreciate that.
And if we might take you up on that invitation to tour one of
Sure.
your retail spots, have you guys?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, be happy to do it.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. Felicia
morning.
Williams at Cosmont Companies. Larry Cosmont says hello.
Sure. Love Larry.
And I have a question about, since you work so well with cities, retail is really changing how land use is thought of for cities now, zoning, specific plans, that sort of thing. What have you seen as you put your new projects in? What changes in land use have you seen, especially around parking? Are you providing less parking? Are you using mobility and walking and biking and rideshare? So what changes have you made as you go forward that you see with land use?
You know, it's all the above. It's really all the above. So we want to be, as a company, we want to be LEEDs, gold on all of our projects. Palisades Village will be the first retail, shopping, business destination in the state of California that will be LEEDs gold. So we spent a lot of time on that. We look at mobility, we look at walkability, we look at dwell time on the properties. We're now designing it to accommodate the driverless car because technology is changing so much. We have not reduced parking. At some point we will. I think the driverless car is going to be a major shift in how the whole city, county, region runs, right? I think it raises a question of how many dollars you put into rail versus dollars into driverless buses, which are going to be much more efficient and much more flexible. They're not stuck on a line, things like that. So we're trying to be ahead of the curve on all of these kind of things. We actually have a checklist of about 100 items that we're trying to accomplish on every project. It makes the project much more expensive, but with my 100-year view, it's the investment that we want to make. So it's a long answer. We could sit down and I could take you through the list, but it's all important stuff.
Hi, I'm Steve Lance from South Bay Cities Council of Governments. I
How you doing,
raised
Steve?
my hand. I'm worried about the senior tsunami and what that means to retail. And I live in the Palisades and appreciate you coming. But what is it going to mean to the aging community, and what does that have to do with your retail dream for the next 100 years?
You know, the senior community is a wonderful customer of ours and a wonderful guest of ours. So think about our properties for a second. They're not designed just to shop. You're going to show up to the Palisades, you're going to have multiple price points of food and product. It's not all high-end. A lot of it is very approachable. You're also going to have an outdoor park that's going to be programmed every day. So from a senior member, it's just a wonderful place to hang out with your family and your friends. That's what these things are designed for. The same at the Grove. If you decide to come to the Grove, grab a cup of coffee and the newspaper and spend all day there, we love that. We absolutely love that. So what we are seeing on our properties is it's generational. The grandfather, the daughter, son, and the grandkids, because everybody can be there and feel comfortable. It's that kind of environment. So the senior population works in our favor.
Hi, my name is
Hi.
Brant Berklin. I'm with the City of West Hollywood Business Development. So you mentioned the role that City of Glendale played in the success of the Americana. I'm curious what cities can do to help retailers succeed, what you look for in your city partners.
Well, first of all, I've been trying to do something in the city of West Hollywood for like 20 years. I'll take your card. Thank you. We've never been able to find the right opportunity, but it's such a great location and a great city. And a lot of your residents are our customers, particularly at the Grove. You know, a lot of it is just giving us a path that we can follow. If we know what the rules are, we'll follow the rules. What frustrates us the most is when the rules change on us because of politics. And my biggest frustration and my gripe, and I'll be politically incorrect here, I'm sorry, Bill, elected officials have to get out of the business of running for re-election and stay in the business of doing what they're hired to do. And so what happens is we got caught in it on a project where all the rules were laid out and the local representative flipped because he was worried about his re-election. And it's the most frustrating part. Now, we know there's some realities, we want to be accommodating, but just tell me the rules. The city of Los Angeles and the Palisades has been spectacular in giving us a roadmap, and they stuck to it, and it was great. The environmental CEQA issues are always complicated. I'd love to do it on a mitigated negative deck. Here's a story for you. Palisades, mitigated negative deck, no EIR. 8500, the retail project, or the residential, mitigated negative deck, no EIR. I'll follow the same rules, just get me out of the morass. And then I'll give you whatever you want, and I'll deliver it on time, and I'll deliver it above your expectations. But that's really about it. Okay, thank you, Billy.
Thank
Love
you, my friend.
Thank you very much. Don't want you to spill that on you.
That's right. As you always do, you have delivered above our expectations
thank
this
you.
morning. Thank you for
Thank you,
sharing
Ray.
the insights you did on the retail industry, but also on how to lead a great organization, no matter what industry we're in or what goals we have. I truly believe you have enriched our lives this morning with your presentation. Thank you so much for doing it.
I'll see you tonight.
Enjoy the day.
I have you at our table.
Terrific. Well, now I'm going to turn the rest of the program over to Elsa Flores, who's our Vice President of Strategic Relations and oversees the production of all these events, as well as our relationships with our members and partners throughout the region. She has assembled a wonderful team of experts to complement the great opening remarks from Rick Caruso and help us continue to deepen our understanding of this important industry cluster here in LA. Please welcome Elsa Flores.
Thank you so much, Bill. And I just have a couple things to say about that. Rick Caruso, wow, what a treat if you're still here. Thank you so much. I care about you, I like you, and I want you to stay. That's what I learned, so thank you so much. PricewaterhouseCoopers has served as a trusted partner to the LADC for many of our future-looking reports, and they have presented at numerous of our events. They serve as a featured speaker for the Future Forum series and have helped us put this event on today. We're fortunate to have a dynamic expert on the retail sector here with us today. Nicholas Hodson has been consulting for more than 20 years and works with retailers on strategy and strategic transformation. He is the U.S. strategy leader and partner. Please welcome our featured speaker this morning, a trusted partner in PricewaterhouseCoopers, Mr. Nicholas Hodson.
Good morning. So I have to follow that, so I got the short straw. So slightly different perspective, it's fair to say, but if you listen carefully, I actually disagree with very, very little of what Rick said. Listen carefully. It'll sound a little bit in places it's different, but actually there's a lot in there that's the same. So let's kind of get into it. It's one of these animated slides. You never quite know what it's going to do. So main messages that I want you to kind of take away. Firstly, there are two mega segments within retail. And the dynamics are different, and I'll talk about what those are. And a lot of the discussion, there's a lot of the stuff you read kind of in USA Today in particular, runs the two together, right? And I think separating them out makes life much more clear. Firstly, there's what I call common goods. I'll talk more about that. But common goods is just general stuff that's the same from store to store. Competition in common goods boils down to much more utilitarian factors, right? It's still experience, but what the consumer means by experience is get me in, get me out, get me home, right? So it's things like price, convenience, product quality, assortment, just bog standard stuff, right? Historically, common goods has experienced waves of what I call format invasion. New business models get invented, and it sweeps across the market. It takes a long time, a generation, maybe two, right? But it goes on and on and on. And most retailers in a career will only ever experience one, right? Common goods needs to be viewed through that lens. These waves sweep through it. There's a wave sweeping through it now, right? Amazon is exactly this wave, the online wave. And if you don't learn from history, you are doomed to relive it, right? Differentiated goods are different, right? Those are goods that are very different from store to store, right? So I can only buy this kind of product in this store. The key capabilities in differentiated goods retailing is what I call end-to-end merchandising. It's the entire process from deciding what you're going to sell, designing it, getting it made, getting it, flowing it out to the store, putting it in the store, getting all of that lined up is really the key differentiating capability in that sector. Though, as I'll show you, e-commerce does enjoy some advantages even in this sector. The flow of data you have is so much better. You can forecast much better. There's a whole bunch of advantages around inventory management that causes the markdown challenge to be much, much less. It's much, much more profitable, and I'll show you that. Okay? So those are the kind of main messages, I think. Oh, one more. The physical stores will continue to play a role, undoubtedly, in differentiated goods. Common goods, we will scratch at that a little bit. Perhaps increasingly as showrooms. And so we'll talk about the bonobos phenomenon, that kind of thing. Okay? I tend to pick up, you'll get this feeling, I tend to pick this up as to some degree, an economics problem, so that there's a sort of underlying economic logic to these businesses, and that's what I want to try and talk to you today about. And then you kind of layer on the differentiation between different kinds of stores is sort of layered on top. So what do we mean, this distinction between common goods and differentiated goods? Right, left-hand side, common goods, stuff you can buy at wherever you buy it, it's basically the same. Probably the best example, gasoline, right? It doesn't matter where you buy it, it's the same. We can argue, Heinz can argue all day long about whether ketchup is a commodity, right? What you can't argue about is that Heinz ketchup is exactly the same regardless of where you buy it, right? So no one ever said, I buy my groceries at store X because they have the best Heinz ketchup, right? Right? Similarly, Pepsi or something, same deal. Products that are sort of unbranded, like a garden hose. Did somebody say, I went to Home Depot because they had the best hose? No, they said it because they had a hose, right? Now, the distinction is not perfect, right? I won't pretend that it is. Where is fresh produce? I'm not quite sure, to be honest, right? But I'm pretty darn sure that over here on the right-hand side, there's some stuff that's very, very unique from store to store, right? I can only buy a Piaget watch in a Piaget store. I can only buy a Zara dress in a Zara store, right? I can only buy the very latest, hippest Nike trainer in a Nike store. I can buy some more general Nike trainers in a sports store or whatever. So you see how the distinction is, right? It's not perfect, but it does help think about it, because essentially everything on this side is a commodity, and everything on this side isn't, right? In common goods, so think about that left-hand side. History has told us that there's a constant, very slow-turning wheel of evolution, right? And this retail wheel was actually invented in the 60s. I mean, it was first written down. What you start with is equilibrium. And in fact, of course, you never quite achieve it because the wheel is slowly rotating all the time. But at equilibrium, you have a whole bunch of stores that serve the market that are essentially identical. So think of mom-and-pop grocery stores in the 1930s, right? Or think of supermarkets in the, say, 1980-ish, right? All the stores are essentially the same, right? You go into a store, and frankly, it's pretty hard to tell whether you're in a Safeway or in a Kroger, right? Or a Ralph's, right? Then some point or other, so in the 1930s, the supermarket was invented. A new kind of format emerges, right? In nearly every case, that format that emerges is lower cost, all right? It has a cost advantage. What does it do to attract customers? It puts that cost advantage on the street as a discount. Because there is, in this common goods area, remember, common goods, right? There is always a market for exactly the same product at a lower price. Can argue, is there a market for the same product at a higher price with a whole bunch of service wrapped around it? Maybe, right? But I'm damn certain that there is a market for the same product at a lower price. So what they do, they put that cost advantage on the street as a discount. It sucks in huge amounts of volume. That creates tremendous economics for them. It's very, very profitable. They build another store. And they do it again. They build another store, and they build another store. Now, it doesn't take very long before somebody else notices what they're doing and says, hey, that's a good idea, right? And what they immediately start doing is build something that looks fairly similar, right? Now, they may differentiate it a little bit, but the basic idea of a supermarket is the same, right? Build another supermarket, build another supermarket. And that results in what's known in retail as the race for space, right? Because it's a hell of a lot of fun to be the first Home Depot into Waco, Texas. It's a lot less fun to be the second one, to be Lowe's coming in second. Because then you've got Home Depot and Lowe's going at each other across the parking lot. When Home Depot's in Waco, Texas all on its own, it's just blitzing in the poor, unfortunate hardware stores, right? And that's super fun, very, very, extremely profitable. The race for space results in very, very rapid expansion. So these companies go barreling across the market, building stores as fast as they can, right? And eventually, and as what's happening as they go through that phase is they're increasingly marginalizing the old formats. Eventually, you come around the curve, you get into a sort of consolidation phase. What starts to happen then? You've pretty much exterminated all of the dinosaurs, if you like, right? The mammals are ruling the roost. What happens then? Well, an interesting phenomenon happens, which is that here you were appealing, as you went into emergence and expansion, you were appealing to price-sensitive customers. Price-sensitive customers, by definition, don't care that much about other things. They want to save a buck, right? Common goods, remember, right? As you move around into consolidation, there's a whole bunch of customers out there who kind of sort of used to shop at the old format, but the old format's no longer there. Because you suck out 25 or 30% of the volume, it's going to die, right? So the nature of the customer base shifts. Here it was concentrated into price sensitive. As you come around the corner into consolidation, there are people in that customer base who care about all the other things. So what do those stores do? They start adding services. So if you look at what Home Depot did, they emerged in 1982. Lowe's emerged about a decade later, or adopted their current format. And in those days, the stores were they're still fairly utilitarian, obviously. But in those days, there was very, very little help at all, right? It was just come in here, get a really great price. As you've come around, now what do they talk about? They talk about we have paint mixing, and we do clinics on how to lay your turf, and we do instructional stuff, and we have people who will design your kitchen for you and all of that, because they've added those services because their customer base has shifted. They now serve essentially all the DIY market, which includes lots of people who care about things other than price. So this circle is how retail has worked. It's sort of the Sears catalog was a version of this. Supermarkets, Home Depot, office superstores, Toys R Us, 1947, right? It's exactly this model, again and again and again. Walmart, then Walmart supercenters, right? And the great fortunes, the great dynasties created in retail have been created through this process, right? The Kresge Foundation, that's the founder of Kmart, much maligned today, but they did this, right? And they made a ton of money at it, right? And guess what? Jeff Bezos is exactly one of these innovators, right? What is this? This is the fulfillment center network that Amazon is building. That's a race for space, right? They've got 142 fulfillment centers now at 1 million square foot each, doing 100 million units per center. 100 million things are going out the back door of those things every year. Absolutely incredible. What they're doing is they're building out that network and it's getting closer and closer and closer to the consumer. What's that? So go back. When they launched, you were lucky to get your product in, what, 5 days, right? It was really low price. You got it in, say, 5 days. Now what you get, you get it 2 days for sure, just about everything, right? And a lot of stuff you get overnight. And the amazing thing is that by 2020, 62% of the population will live within 50 miles of an Amazon fulfillment center. And I don't mean a Prime Now one. I mean one of those million square foot doodads, right? What that means is they can deliver same day to you, right? If you're just buying some fairly commodity item that lots of people buy, I don't know, like a big pack of AA batteries or something, right? They'll be able to deliver that same day to you, not because it's a sort of incremental service, but because it's actually the cheap thing to do. Just pick it, ship it, right? That's an amazing thing that they've coming around that circle and starting to add the service back, right? And how do they define service? How does he define experience? Lowest prices, vast selection, and super fast, right? That's what people care about in common goods, right? Just save me some time, right? Give me some time back, just as Rick was saying. But when you examine, what Bezos talks about, he talks about it in that sense. There's this wonderful quote of him saying, being asked, what's coming next? What's going to change in the future? And his answer is, I like to think about what's not going to change, right? And what he says is, people will always want more selection, they will always want lower prices, and they will always want faster delivery and more convenience, right? That's common goods, right? So, common goods lessons from history, right? So common goods, where e-com has strong cost and price advantage, retail stores are very challenged. It's a big problem. This wave is passing through, right? Toys R Us did it to toy stores, and it took, what, 60 years, 65 years, right? 65 years later, it's their turn, right? And I don't know what the hell the next thing will be in another 20 or 30 years, but someday, there will be something else. Second, if that's the case, what you'll find is that most of the investments in existing store formats are likely to be regret investments, which is a scary thing to say. Common goods, remember, I'm banging on about that. I'll talk about differentiated. But you're throwing good money after bad. So you see a lot of discussion in the Toys R Us, right? We should have invested in experience. Maybe, right? But you're competing against a guy who's selling exactly the same stuff as you at lower prices and more conveniently. So you're going to add cost. Is that a good idea, right? So they were basically pretty hosed, right? In particular, investments in store experience may add cost. So watch out. It's not obvious in common goods that you should layer on lots and lots of costs, because history tells us the low-cost guy wins, right? FAO Schwarz, right? If experience was so important in toy retailing, why did the FAO Schwarz close, right? It was a beautiful store. It was super fun. No one bought anything in it because they could buy it cheaper on Amazon, right? The role of the store will change. So there's a real challenge for these retailers competing with Amazon. Amazon has only Amazon, and perhaps, just perhaps, Walmart has the scale to build out enough of these fulfillment centers. They're very, very scale sensitive, so it doesn't make sense to build a small one. So you can't, if you're a small retailer, you kind of have to put one in Salt Lake City or one in Louisville, Kentucky, the sort of east and west logistics hubs. The trouble is, what's your shipping time? 2-3 days, probably, right? So I say, well, okay, I could build lots and lots and lots, and I'd be close to my consumer, but then I suffer horrible diseconomies of scale on the pick and pack side. So only Amazon can build out this network. That's the alternative for the stores really has to be leveraging the store as a fulfillment hub, right? The only way I can get product to a consumer to commit at anything like the same speed as Amazon is to use the stores. And you're seeing that more and more and more. Best Buy's doing it, Target's doing it, and it makes a lot of sense. The pick and pack is inefficient, right? You don't have robots and all of that, and there are these annoying customers that get in the way when you're trying to, hit your productivity target on picking. But you get a bunch back on the shipping side because you only ship it 20 or 30 miles. And then finally, this is my sort of favorite little anecdote. I've done a lot of work in convenience stores. So a format wave went through gasoline stations, right, starting in about 1969, self-serve gas, right? And how many self-serve gas stations are there in the United States outside New Jersey and perhaps a few in Oregon? Not even one, right? Not even one. And you can absolutely bet that the consumers, the proprietors of these full-serve gas stations back in about 1970 say, it'll all be fine. I know my customers. Give them a great experience. I know their kids. Right? The only thing that people care about, and this is the most common of common goods, right? The only thing they care about is fast in, fast out, and low price. No one cares about anything else. And they're turned out to not be a high service, high touch segment. Otherwise, there'd be full-serve gas stations, and there just aren't. Not even one, right? So, common goods, right? So, sort of flip the story to differentiated goods. Firstly, consumers are much less certain what they want. As Rick had great, in a differentiated store, differentiated retailing, only about 30% of the people who go into a store actually buy something. Rick had conversion rates for the whole mall, so that's kind of flipping that coin several times, right? Consumers are much less educated or familiar with the product, so they may actually need to touch and feel and try on and all that kind of stuff. And that could be the latest tech product. It could be the avocado, or it could be a new suit or a pair of jeans or whatever it is, right? They're potentially susceptible to a sales pitch in differentiated goods. That looks fantastic on you, madam, right? So because you can upsell, right? Did anybody ever say, look at this can of soup, it's fantastic. You want to buy two, right? It's not worth it, right? So a lot of these goods are what I call sold, not bought, right? Because the goods are differentiated from each other, consumers are a lot less price sensitive from store to store because the good isn't the same, so you can't make as direct a comparison, right? That means that the contribution margins, the margins you make on these products are higher, right? As a result, incremental transactions are very often a lot more valuable. So if I'm only selling the average basket size of grocery store, $28 at what, 25% margin. So I'm making $7 of gross margin, and then I got a bunch of costs I got to pay. These in a decent apparel store, average ring is $100 at 70% gross margin. I got $70 to play with, right? As a result, it makes a lot of sense to invest in experience. You can afford to pay your people more. You can afford to have nice flooring, nice lighting, space. All of that makes sense. It's economically rational, right? And finally, the consumers are a lot more fickle, right? Tastes change in this area. Do you have flares or straights? Where's the waistband on the jeans? All that stuff, right? And that creates this need for end-to-end merchandising. Differentiated goods, the biggest single cost is markdown. Doesn't show up as OpEx, but it's this huge amount of value that just kind of leaks out of the business. So Gap sells about 40% of its product at full price. Zara only sells about 85% of its product at full price. If you know you're going to sell it at full price, you can afford to mark it up less at the beginning. So you have a crushing value proposition. Gap might have your product, and if they do, it's going to be more expensive. Zara almost certainly has what you're looking for in some magical way. You don't even know what you want until you get there. But if you do, and if they do, it's going to be cheaper. So where do? You go to Zara, right? E-commerce, interestingly, has a structural advantage on this markdown issue. If you look at a typical apparel retailer that has both stores and an online presence, what's called the AUR, the average unit retail, is higher online for the same product, right? But the reason that happens is that because the inventory is pooled in one place, it's much easier to forecast, and you're much less likely to get it stranded out there in Minneapolis somewhere, right? And so you mark down much less, you get better margins, and as a result, you can then afford to price it lower in the first place because you know you're going to sell it. That goes a long way to offsetting the return rate, which in differentiated goods and online, particularly apparel, obviously, can be pretty nasty. That's driven by the architecture of the supply chain. Inventory pools in a brick and mortar, everything gets pushed out into the sort of periphery. It gets stuck there. It gets marked down. It's horrible. If I do it all from one inventory pool, that's much more efficient and predictable. Or I can sort of use e-commerce to say, somebody in Seattle ordered a product. I'm long that product in Miami, and I ship it up there. Okay. So just one final thing on showrooms. What's a showroom? A showroom is a store that doesn't sell anything, right? It's a very, very interesting concept because what happens with a showroom is you don't bother to ship the inventory out there. You just ship a handful of items for showing. That means your inventory management is vastly improved, and you're able to manage that markdown much more effectively. Bonobos is leading the way on that. There's my sort of beautiful picture. That's the one I had. And just finally, this is a kind of little bit of math. On jeans, Bonobos only needs to carry 220 items to be in the jeans business. Gap has to carry 3,640, right? Frightening, right? And so, I'm actually very bullish about this model. I think that's if I can go in, try it on, say, yes, I want it, and then get it the same day, delivered to my home, pretty cool, right? And it's massively more efficient. So finally, differentiated goods, key takeaways. The store will always have a role. There's always going to be some need for touch and feel. And this is retail therapy, right? This is go and spend the day at the mall, right? And it's fun, right? But no one ever said, I'm going to go spend the day at Walmart. It's going to be awesome, right? Right? Or even more, I'm going to spend the day in the parking lot at Walmart, right? But the economics of online retailing is still compelling even in this sector, largely due to inventory effects. It's one of the things I say is if in traditional retail it's location, 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 in e-com it's inventory, inventory, inventory. Inventory drives all the costs. And showrooms may be a sort of way to get the best of both worlds. So that, I think, is what I wanted to cover. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nick. And please hold your questions. We will invite Nick back up to the stage for the panel discussion. Our next two speakers will each speak for about 12 to 13 minutes, and then we'll be able to have the panel discussion. So thank you so much. Again, Nick, differentiated goods seems to be the brick and mortar coming up, so I think we're excited to see more of that. Our next speaker is going to be speaking about social media influencers. And I'm sorry, where am I? Let's see. Please welcome our expert in this field, partner with Nixon Peabody, Ms. Ellie Altschuler.
Hello. Can you guys hear me okay? I didn't really plan my outfit very well when I realized I had to be mic'd and there was nothing to really mic it to. Okay, so we're going to be talking about social media influencers, and we're going to be talking about how that affects retail. So first thing, who here goes on Facebook? Anyone on Instagram? Spend some time on YouTube? Okay. When you're on these sites, you see sponsored posts, okay? Usually, or they should have what's called a disclosure that includes an ad, a hashtag ad symbol or hashtag sponsor so that you're aware that it's an influencer promoting a brand or a retailer. This is all, I'm going to tie this all together for you, but that's the context of what we're talking about today. So what is an influencer? Okay, the very obvious definition is an influencer is a person that can influence. They can influence your purchasing decisions, okay? And they're able to connect with you and they have a following. Most retailers and brands, as they decide to work with influencers, they look for who has the largest following and the best engagement. And they decide, okay, if I spend money here, I'm going to see some ROI because the following of the influencer is going to then follow the lead of the influencer and buy the products they're promoting, okay? So what is a micro-influencer? This is a new term that's come about in the last year or so. And a micro-influencer has a smaller following, but super engaged. And it's usually in a more niche market. So it could be potentially somebody that's plus size, or they're targeting a very specific community of people. In marketing, big brands and retailers started by working with these large influencers, and now the direction is taking a budget, breaking it down into smaller pieces, and focusing on micro-influencers so that they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. So what I want to kind of walk you through how influencer marketing has evolved in the last couple years. Okay, so it started with affiliate marketing. And what that means is you see your favorite influencer post an outfit on Instagram, and there's a little, you click on the shirt she's wearing and you can go and shop directly on Nordstrom's, right? Or whatever retailer she has a partnership with. And through these affiliate marketing links, the influencer is getting 10% back on the sale and driving traffic to the retailer. This is a great way for a retailer or a brand to test whether that influencer actually has influence over the followers that they have. It's really, really low investment. They're giving up 10% of the sale. So once they test it and they realize this is an influencer that really understands their target demographic, they invest a little bit more. And they invest in very, very specific campaigns, and I've called that a brand deal. These are one-off programs where a retailer or a brand says to the influencer, I want you to create specific content that promotes me. Okay, and I want to integrate it into the content that you already create. So it's authentic, it's organic, your audience doesn't feel like you're a sellout and you're promoting something that doesn't make sense for you, and it fits in really well with the content you currently create. Okay, so these are the types of brand deals that an influencer gets paid, a flat fee generally, it's a one-off, it's one and done, and everybody is happy, everyone's making money. So in success for these brand deals, retailers and brands are like, well, why don't we work together on something a little bit larger? Why don't we figure out a campaign that's not a one-off, but where we can actually build a relationship with the influencer? And that's called a brand ambassador. And I'm going to tie this all together for you on how these different things need to be disclosed a certain way. So I just want to point that out, put a pin in that. So with brand ambassadors, they represent the brand. They become the face, just kind of like any traditional celebrity when people used to, or when big brands used to invest in billboards and you would see celebrities' name, image, likeness splashed all around. This is the same idea, but with a digital footprint. So the influencer then becomes the face of the brand, promotes it through multiple posts that are very, very planned throughout a calendar year. Potentially, it could be a shorter 6-month program, but this is a much longer relationship than a one-off brand deal. And these brand deals, when somebody's an ambassador or they do a one-off deal, sometimes it comes with in-store appearances because retailers understand that they need success both online and offline. And by bringing the influencer into the store for a personal appearance, they're able to drive foot traffic into the store. So these deals, these larger ambassador deals, have multiple layers. The influencers create content, and oftentimes they come themselves. In success, these brands decide, you know what, let's do something more together. Why don't we do a licensing deal with the influencer and actually create product? This way, the influencer now has multiple streams of revenue. They're getting paid to promote online, and they're actually working with the brand to create physical product. Okay, in those are licensing deals. They're structured like traditional licensing deals, but they do have a very, very strong marketing component because that's the reason to work with an influencer rather than a traditional celebrity, right? The influencer is able to command a very large audience that's engaged. They build community and they speak to each other. An example of a great licensing deal that happened at the end of last year was a collaboration between Something Navy, it's this influencer named Ariel Charnas, and Nordstrom. So they started with a much smaller program, just a couple different pieces, and within 24 hours, she sold $1 million worth of goods. So now Nordstrom said, well, let's revisit this because you drove so much traffic online and in-store with this product collaboration. We're going to do this again, and we're going to do your own line at Nordstrom. So that's what that is, and I had the privilege of putting that together. So there's other ways that influencers can work with retailers. And I want to use the word influencer a little bit more broadly with this next example. So when Raf Simons came over to Calvin Klein, he became the chief creative officer there. He had a very, very great relationship with Sterling Ruby, who's an incredible, probably top 10 contemporary artist. His work is super expressive and lives well on social media because it's really colorful, it's interesting, and he's been, in the last couple of years, been able to create a lot of conversation around his work. So Raf called Sterling and said, why don't we work together? Why don't you help create the brand DNA for Calvin Klein? So in this negotiation, which took a very, very long time, mostly because we had to figure out what can Calvin Klein do with the images and artwork of Sterling Ruby online, okay? So this is a very good example of a huge retailer brand working with an artist influencer beyond just the art themselves so that they can use what they've created together for promotional purposes in multiple online campaigns. And here's just some visuals from that. Super beautiful store. Sterling Ruby helped redesign the interior. He's not an architect. He's an artist with a huge following, and he decided to choose very bright colors, textured materials in order to drive traffic online and in-store. Okay? So how does this affect advertising regulations, right? So I'm a lawyer. I can't walk away not talking about how this affects the law, right? So here's the situation. There's this body called the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, and they are in the business of protecting the consumer, okay? So they look at these social media campaigns and say, well, you guys, as a consumer, if you didn't know that the influencers paid to say something, that you're not able to properly assess whether it's the influencer's unbiased opinion or if they're promoting something because they have a material connection with the brand. So the FTC said, I'm going to issue these endorsement guides. And what these endorsement guides do is they require the social media influencer to disclose their connection with the brand, okay? So there are certain ways to disclose that are okay, and there are certain ways that the FTC has said are not okay, and then there's the gray area in between, which is probably why I have a job. And so the influencers come to me and they're like, well, I don't want to have to say advertisement each time or hashtag ad. I don't want to have to put hashtag sponsor for each post. What else can I say in order to accurately communicate the fact that I have a relationship with the brand without using those words? And so what the FTC has said is, as long as you're clear and your disclosure is conspicuous, you're fine. So the buckets of words that they've approved are ad and sponsor, and what they've said is not okay using small abbreviations like hashtag SP, where people don't really know what that means. They've also gone on to say that using words like ambassador is okay if it has the name of the brand ahead of it, because that way it's very clear who your ambassador, like who you are an ambassador of. The FTC has gone on to say, hey, employers, big brands and retailers, oftentimes you ask your employees to promote new campaign, any sort of product that you put out. And we want you to make sure that your employees actually say that they're employed by you. So the FTC is getting really, really involved in this space, not just with the influencer, how we think of traditional people with a following, but anybody that has a connection with the brand, okay? So just to kind of touch on some of these points, a material connection is payment, but it can also be free goods. It can be access to a store early. It's anything that can influence the way in which you would talk about the particular brand. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Oh, wonderful. All our industries are experiencing transitions due to new technologies, and retail is no different. Here to present to us about shaping the future workforce of retail is Associate Professor of Management for California State University, Dominguez Hills, is Dr. Thomas Norman.
Thank you. All right. Good morning. Still have a little bit of morning left. I know I stand between you and getting back to work for most of you. But I want to begin with a question. What have most of you been told by your organizational leaders, or what do you as your leader tell your organizations are the most important asset? Human capital, employees, right? We use different words. Human capital is a little bit more edgy. And all of us have lived through a lot of massive disruption driven by two things: globalization and technology, the rate of change. So I'm going to talk about the massive disruption in retail employment and relate that to education. As your educational speaker, just list my background here to highlight social studies, and that I find not only is truth under attack, being a professor for 10 years, right, but the academy is under attack, and find myself having to defend the fact that we require a general education of our students getting 4 years, like I had when I went from a small school with a class of 19 in the woods of northern Wisconsin, where we brought guns to school 1 week a year to learn how to shoot them to hunt, to a place where, as a kid in a candy store, Harvard, where I could have a choice of classes, right? It wasn't constrained. I was in a school where we didn't have 4 years of Spanish because we couldn't get a Spanish teacher to come. Okay, so that served me through the disruption of my life. I went to Harvard thinking I wanted to study the Soviet Union, become in the State Department. By the time I left Harvard, there was no Soviet Union, and went on a trip with, actually the Harvard professor didn't show up, with 20 of the best universities to the dissolving Commonwealth of Independent States. So what my main takeaway when asked what do the universities need to do to prepare people for retail, let's keep doing what we're doing. Let's generally educate folks, because without that education, which then later, as Rick noted, masters can be useful, that became more specific. I've worked in marketing for Procter & Gamble. I've been a business banker for 10 years for 2 of our larger banks, and then I ended up never having HR experience, leading HR and leadership programs at Sun Microsystems during the dot-com boom. That was made possible by this general education, not taking a specific, retail or other course. Though retail was my first job, as was the case of 60% of the students I polled in a lecture class yesterday, 200 in there. Most of our Dominguez Hills students have experience in retail. All right, that's a picture of a sign outside of my old office when I worked in Silicon Valley, 97 to 2001. It's now occupied by a new resident, somebody who I saw at my 25th reunion, Mr. Zuckerberg. He's renamed the street. But it's interesting. It was shared with me that there's a little reminder of our experience when I was at Sun Microsystems, and a constant reminder to his employees. You, driving by, will see this. If you sat in my old office and looked out the window, you would see Sun Microsystems. Okay, it's not just because Mark's cheap and wanted to save money on real estate. That's a reminder, he tells his employees. Do not fail. Do not let this rapid change make you fold into another company, like my company became part of Oracle. Facebook wants to be around to stay. Some comments that Rick made earlier really resonate too, and the micro lesson I want for folks to take away, which is how he treats his employees, right? If you are having fun and then he looks for creative people who are generally trained, I think you're going to be successful because of this. He's not as celebrated as the Jobs or the Bill Gates, but John Chambers was the executive I was most impressed with at that time. This is an old quote, you can tell from one of the words. He stated the Industrial Revolution was about economies of scale. Okay, China's doing that right now very well. When I go and lecture there, I know that they want to focus on what we called the internet revolution back then, when we were putting the dot and .com. Today I would call this the knowledge revolution. It's all about economies of skill, okay, what people know, what they can do for you, and how you empower and engage people. Okay, so that's kind of the big message. The other message for Americans, I remember getting in arguments a lot, not with the Price Waterhouse folks, but leaders of a lot of dying America who were mad about how valuable my company was when their auto company wasn't worth much, or Sears, Kmart type folks, who would tell me how uncreative China is. All they do is copy and steal and make life hard. Well, let's realize why we study history in universities. If we look for 2,000 years, we'll see, in terms of GDP contribution, American CEOs are just a blip, right? Our country didn't even exist for most of this. China, India, those civilizations were incredibly creative, have much that we draw on today, but many of our leaders are woefully unaware of history, right? I find people are always reassured that I know a little bit about Chinese history when I go there. It's better known today than it was in the 2000s, early 90s. And again, another professor type graph in terms of how fast things are changing. I share this with you just to look at the importance of convenience in terms of the rate of adoption. Certain things like electricity, which are hard to distribute, took a long time to get to 99, 100% saturation, but something like air conditioning, much quicker. Okay, so that's kind of driving macro things I want to talk about. I was asked to focus in on retail, and what has happened. We've heard stories about new directions you can take your company. What does this mean for my students looking for a job, many of whom are already in retail? All right, the growth we know is in e-commerce, okay, 3 times, 334%. But you may not know, and we didn't hear about this, warehouse clubs, okay? And a consolidation, which the story we heard today about the Grove makes perfect sense. Department stores, fallen flat. 10 years ago, some of the first student leaders I knew worked at Macy's, worked at these department stores. I don't hear my students working that type of retail. It's primarily Sprint, T-Mobile, different types of retail supporting a technology product. What does this mean for the economic planners of Los Angeles County, okay, in terms of this job and disruption? Where are the jobs coming and going? The good news is we're in Los Angeles County, which is a major metro area. So e-commerce is a source of new jobs, right, 178,000. But also warehouse. So retail, in terms of employment, is a growing area. Retail is strong. It's just the department store, the familiar retail brands we're used to, they've been decimated, right? Almost 500,000 jobs lost if we look over 15 years. And this is creating some great innovation, as we've heard. One of my students works in the Torrance Kohl's. I only went there because I'm a good Amazon customer. I wanted to return something. It was my fault. I would have to pay unless I took a trip to Kohl's. Then they would return it for free. So I go to Kohl's. My wife goes there quite a lot, but I rarely go to Kohl's. And there I see, wow, prime location, right? What are they doing? They're taking the space where we've heard there's a glut and letting Amazon teach people about their products. Perhaps less sophisticated people, my student tells me. A lot of women are less likely to buy the first, Echo. I'm the one that wanted to put this new Amazon device with a camera in our bedroom. And I was like, no camera's ever going in the bedroom at all. Even it helps me see what I look like. Maybe in 2 years she'll try that product. But I did sneak a show in, and we put a little thing over the camera, right? So we have a show in our bedroom now. But this is a great example, if you haven't seen this, of how brick and mortar is working with online retail. All right, labor economics 101. Always remember that labor is a derived demand, okay? Productivity is going to drive wages. Again, we've heard this message, you need to deliver value. So if we look from 87 to 15, the value of production in retail has been good. This is a great story. There is opportunity for people leading these organizations. The better story for my students is that labor competition costs, which to them would be their wages, have been going up. But this fits with the way wealth and income is changing in America too. Notice that when I was graduating, productivity gains were being shared fairly nicely with retail employees. And look at this great divergence. Okay, so that's something to think about, and why I'm not surprised that Rick is having such success. I imagine the compensation, the loyalty rate for those top people is probably tracking more, but for those in the mass retail, right, those jobs around the country are pretty close to minimum wage, right? They have not seen much growth for 20 years, which makes it very, very challenging for that industry. Now here's the good news for Los Angeles. I wanted to give you a picture showing you that retail, where I grew up, in this small town, and the city near it, an hour drive, I could go to the city of Duluth, 100,000 people then, about 85,000 people now that had a Simon-managed mall. You can shoot a cannonball in this mall, right? There are no tenants in rural America. I didn't hear that. I heard a little knock in Minneapolis over here and a knock maybe on Milwaukee, areas where my wife and are from. Minneapolis, actually, I will say, is thriving and is a good place to go to, but Wisconsin, less density, the manufacturing's finally going away. So good news for our corridor, but don't forget about the rest, of the United States and what that's going to mean. I think that helps explain a little bit of the last presidential election. There's this big divide between how rural people feel about urban elites. Impact on types of jobs. Again, they're like, well, what will the new jobs be? People have to learn to do something new. I want to caution you that no, when you get an IT person or a programmer, they're going to replace maybe 50 jobs. So you can't take 50 people that were cashiers and turn them into that. You do need those skills, but you don't need the same number. So the vast amount of employment is in your cashier, your low-level minimum wage jobs. These aren't great jobs, but they do exist in great numbers. I think they will continue to exist as they transform, but I need to leave you with some things to do differently. Customer experience leaders. Okay, we've heard examples of that. The importance of social influencing relates to big data. So this might be a skill those of you counseling or those of you in retail, if you don't have, you need to get it, just as my university does. Just finished a search. Well, we should be making an offer soon to somebody whose goal is going to be help us as a university crunch the numbers throughout the whole system and look at holistically, something that probably should report directly to the president because it is that important to make sure the time we spend makes sense. Techie types, the programmers, IT designers are going to be important. And then what I call the modern sales associate that are mobile friendly with old-fashioned sense of customer service. So this could be at the Pacific Palisades process. This could be this concierges. That fits in exactly what I'm thinking, but also mobile in terms of a lock I bought from Amazon. Didn't just come with a lock, it came with a person who came to my house to install the lock and install a camera so Amazon can just leave the packages inside my house. It keeps those package thieves from taking my packages. Freaked my wife out too on that, but she eventually relented to try this and, trust that they just open the door and push it in. So, that's getting mobile. Amazon's gonna deliver to my trunk now. Okay, so think of ways that you'll get people. Best Buy, a company I used to work with in the Minneapolis area, is looking at sending people to your home. Geek Squad becomes vital to their survival because you're more likely to buy more stuff for your home theater when somebody's in there looking at exactly the specs, getting you the right stuff, giving you that experience. So, if you pay $3,000 for this, it sounds like you paid $3,000 versus my buying it, trying to string it up, and it sounding like a $200 experience. All right. We're going to go by this. There aren't many top retail management degrees. LA is doing something, but again, scratch the surface, look at the detail. We have retail programs, but they have only one retail specific course. They're really management or marketing programs with one course added on. With the exception of fashion, we do a great job in LA. The fashion programs with that segment, I think, are fairly differentiated. Here's the micro lesson. So I have this model, actually I got it before I got my PhD, on what you need to do to adapt to these types of changes. There's 4 parts to it, but I want to just have you think about 2 that fit perfectly with what I heard from Rick today. One is, how well are you directing or aligning your talent to the challenges today? Most American companies are not doing a very good job of getting people to work on the right things. You need to work on that. Jeff Bezos has, if you read his last letter to the shareholders, great letter, should be required reading for any of you as managers, that gets to that importance of alignment, how to use a memo in a meeting to make sure people are actually having productive meetings and not. When I was in Silicon Valley, when I worked at Procter & Gamble, the people I know at GE, they tend to be pretty good at being aligned. 90% gives you a huge advantage over that average company that's maybe only 50% aligned. Now this multiplies with your engagement. This is where I see companies that end up getting acquired or going bankrupt are failing in alignment. They're not meeting the current needs of the industry, and they're not getting their employees to work hard. It becomes this vicious circle. We're not doing well, we don't feel good, we don't work as hard. Gallup does a lot of work on this, showing how engaged folks are. So if you're not familiar with that, you can use that, start tracking that to see where you're at. And when you don't get these things right, you can go from a company that's not making anything for an employee, obviously into negative territory. These zombie companies tends to be only government organizations that can survive when you're in that negative territory. To quickly show you what this looks like in a book that kind of influenced my thinking there, Good to Great. Doing it right, 80%, you know how to hire and train people. Okay, you could have a surplus per employee on your average $50,000 a year employee of $14,000. After your training, they're $78,000. Compare that to a company, your typical US company, just a little bit less aligned, 70% versus 80, 70% engaged. and you actually see no gain. Okay, this is why you have the good to great companies continually to be at the top, and they stay at the top. And this is why companies, we loved it at Sun when Sun and Compaq merged, because they got out of alignment, right? And each of their employees were creating huge losses, which means you lay 10, 20,000 off until you get back to that level of productivity. So macro, micro lessons on what this change in retail means for those of you managing the economy and looking for that. I know we're running over time here, so thank you for your attention, and we'll move to the panel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Norman. We look forward to the graduating students of the future of retail. Please stay up here, and I'd like to invite Nick and Ellie back up here for our panel conversation. Please welcome our moderator for the panel, LAEDC Executive Committee member and Managing Director for PricewaterhouseCoopers, our moderator extraordinaire, Mike Condazzi.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for hanging in there. While we're all enjoying ourselves here at the Water Garden, and we may all be at the Grove this weekend, we are just sitting in a point in time in a world that's shifting dramatically. Over 500 million people have been lifted out of poverty just in the last decade alone, and in the next 20 to 50 years, we'll see another 2 billion people join the middle class. Wanted to kind of just take a few minutes to hear some perspectives, 2 minutes from each of the folks on the panel, but then more importantly, get your questions. And some of the other things that are shifting, and we've all seen probably the Amazon story, the Amazon Go story. In addition to just Amazon doing it, there's other technology providers now providing that in-store experience. There's AI Poly, there's standard cognition, where you walk into the store, they know who you are, they know what your behavior is, they know what you've touched, they know if you've cracked open that water bottle, they know if you've taken it, they've charged your credit card, and they've ordered new inventory already. And so I just wanted to kind of start with Nick and your just incredible experience in working with some of the world's largest retailers. What's your view on the Amazon Go deal and some of these other technologies that are entering the retail environment?
So I guess you won't be surprised. The first thing I think about is the numbers, right? So in a supermarket, it costs about 75 cents to sell an item in a supermarket. So you get $2.50 of revenue, you get whatever that is, about 80 odd cents of margin, and it costs about, you burn up about 70 in costs, and you're left with 10, something like that. About 6 cents of that 70 cents is checkout, or about 2.5% of sales. So the actual cost saving of not having a cashier at all is, material but not gigantic, right? So I think, there is some saving. I don't know what it looks like when you factor in the capital. I think that's clearly going to be subject to strong learning effects, and it'll get cheaper over time. I think more importantly, it is a great experience under the Bezos mantra. It's faster, right? Faster and quicker and easier and all that. It's not about dancing girls. It's just like really quick and easy. And then perhaps most importantly, what he's actually doing with that technology is being able to follow effectively what you could call a clickstream in a store, right? That they're able to understand the stuff that you went and looked at and put back, stuff that you kind of didn't even notice that display because it wasn't in the right position or it wasn't eye-catching enough or whatever, and the stuff that you actually bought and all of that. Just like they can online, they can track your entire kind of purchase wanderings, right? As you look at something and abandon the cart and all that. They can get the Amazon Go technology enables them to capture all that data in a physical environment.
Very interesting. So not only is the e-commerce world changing, the physical world is changing, and the experience is changing, and the way that we're engaging customers and the way that we're selling to customers is changing. And Ellie, I mean, just incredible experience. You're talking about these influencers. 4 or 5 years ago, we start seeing different people's pictures and posts pop up on social media. We don't think much about it, do we? But when you think about the massive impact that it's having on our decisions and where customers are going, how they're shopping, what's your sense for anybody who's in the retail business who wants to kind of explore the influencer world? What would you suggest?
I'm going to answer that question, but before I do, I just wanted to kind of follow up on some key things that Amazon's doing that I think is really interesting. Okay. So in addition to Amazon Go, which we just talked about, they're actually working with a lot of influencers as well. And they started by taking influencers and using them to curate different packages. So for example, there is a party planner influencer, and she was hired and brought on to the Amazon team to kind of curate all the different party supplies in case you wanted to host an event. And so they started working with her in that capacity, and now they're working with a lot of influencers to create different apparel, different like apparel items. So they're really playing in the fashion space too. So this is not intended to be an Amazon praise session, but I do think that for influencers, it is another opportunity, which is really incredible. So to answer your question, if you're a brand or a retailer and you're thinking about working with an influencer, it's most important to really identify who your target customer is first. Once you understand who that is, then you know who you're trying to reach, and you work backwards. So then it's important, data person would know, data people would know that you would look at the influencer and ask them to break down who their demographic is, what's their age, gender, what are their shopping patterns, who do they reach? And so once you're able to get those numbers, then you can figure out a very successful program.
Amazing. What a difference in the way the world has gone from e-commerce to artificial intelligence to influencers in the mix now. And business leaders and government officials and educators need to start thinking differently about, how are we going to make this transformation? And as I'm going around talking to different business leaders, I'm finding out that a lot of them have started these incubators within their company, and that was going to be their answer, and they have 4 or 5 people in a dark room somewhere creating kind of the new ideas and the new future. But many of these folks, including the retailers, have lots of employees, sometimes tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees. So how do we bring along the workforce, Thomas? How do we make sure that our workforces are coming along on this journey with us as we're having to kind of transform in the future of retail?
Yeah, I think employers really need to embrace higher education. They need to challenge. We have some advisory boards, not just at the university level, not just at the college, but I even created one for the department, and then a sub-program, a human resource advisory board, to figure out from the recruiters in LA, what are the deficiencies in our students, what skills do they want to see. So I think that involvement is important, and then for professors to listen and try to become more applied. I'm trying to help build the best applied business administration, public administration, criminal justice administration programs in Southern California, because it's kind of blue ocean. You see USC, UCLA have great brand names, but there it's about research and kind of building your fame. It's not as much about in the classroom doing a service learning project where all 100 of our HR students volunteer 4 hours to a regional occupational center in Torrance to help welders and cosmetologists get their first job, right? So really working with industry so we can provide those skill experiences, whether it's in the 4-year or the 2-year, I think is what retail should be doing. And let's look at another Seattle person, Starbucks, right? Offering to those lower skilled retail workers that opportunity to get that 2-year or that 4-year degree to broaden them. If you want to be successful, move on as a manager, a director, vice president, you have to be good in this economy in at least 2 very different things, right? Don't just be good at accounting, have a creative side, or don't just be an artist, maybe learn some biology. And if you really want to be great, if you look at the top 20 leaders, they're saying they're excellent in 3 areas. So those are just a few ideas I have of how we need a better industry, kind of higher ed partnership.
Amazing. Well, thank you. And just because we want to keep our agenda moving on, and we haven't had a lot of audience engagement yet, I wanted to kind of open up the opportunity for you folks to ask some questions of our esteemed panel. I think we have a question right back there, and we have a microphone that's going around as well.
I'm intrigued with the idea of an influencer career. Kim Kardashian is probably the superstar, but beyond that, is anybody looking at this as a new career path, to be an influencer as a role?
So that's a great question. Yes, there's a lot of people, especially moms, are looking at being an influencer as a career path, because it's something that you could do from home. I actually spoke at a conference last week in Utah, or 2 weeks ago, called Self-Made, and it was put on by one of my clients who's a big YouTube content creator, and he's kind of the modern Bill Nye the Science Guy. And he put together this conference, and there were 150 attendees of people in various stages of their career attempting to become an influencer or to become a bigger influencer. And so these people paid upwards of $1,000 to spend 3 days and really learn about how to create content, how to monetize. And I went and spoke there. And what I think is interesting, to take your question one step further, being an influencer is definitely a career path, but there's so many other jobs that surround it. So very successful influencers have managers, they have agents, they have attorneys, they have business managers. So there's a lot of jobs around the influencer career. And there's plenty of advertising agencies that are opening up that are focusing on just digital talent. And so they work with brands to create ad campaigns, and they engage influencers to create the content for the campaigns. So in the digital media, there's a lot of opportunity for jobs.
A quick story on influencers. One of my past students, a woman named Bree, was studying finance at Dominguez Hills, very, very bright woman, but her side hustle was kind of being an influencer on Facebook, rating different music personalities. She did that, made a little bit of money, and Facebook then just finally scooped her up. She was back on her campus speaking to millennials who just loved that, and I'm like, wow, what an interesting first job. You could end up being at Facebook, and I think she pulled $2,000 out of her checking account and added to our incubator prize, right? So in a sense, being a startup, an influencer is like being a startup person, and that really validated for the 400 high school students in the auditorium. Maybe I could do that as that route. Maybe they'll stay and be an influencer. Facebook, and I think other companies are going to want to start to hire that talent too.
What a great question. Yeah, I mean, 10 years ago, someone asked me, he said, hey, my kid's on YouTube all the time. Is they going to be able to make a career out of that? Yeah. There's plenty of people making a lot of money out of YouTube. And actually, I think someone made $7 million playing esports last year.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, question there.
This is sort of in a different direction, but I'm curious if any of the panelists can speak to the confluence of technology, 3D printing, additive manufacturing in retail, as we see the sort of shifting of retail space. It's getting smaller, getting more experiential, and yet we have technology sort of moving into the back rooms, if you will, in terms of inventory management. So I'm curious, any take?
So I don't know quite where it's going to go, but you can imagine, I talked a lot about inventory, and you're dead right? That phenomenon would enable you to massively reduce inventory. Are we going to have 3D printed clothes? People have talked about that. I don't know, right? But you could imagine sort of customization, I don't know, buttons and accessories and things like that, totally. And in store-based retailing, there is this tremendous challenge of predicting what any individual store is going to sell. And so 3D printing technology could be, really transformative. There's some potential for that being at least one, some element of the next turn of the wheel, right?
Yeah, I'll just add to that maybe a little bit if it's okay, because I think the big idea is out there for people to capture. And the big idea with 3D printing is that you could theoretically send a 50-pound bag of titanium dust to a location along with a parts catalog of 1 million parts in it, right? So you don't need to send 1 million parts. So that's working well, like maybe in forward locations, like in a battlefield or in the Space Center, and also in retail or in repair places where you need a low-volume, high-value part, like in repairing an airplane or something. So in retail, there's definitely an opportunity there. You haven't seen the big idea yet, but I think that's where the big idea is going to come from. The fact that I don't have to just, as in Nicholas's slide, spend all this money on inventory and send it to 1,000 locations, let it sit there, and then have to mark it down.
I mean, there's a very sort of almost trivial example. It actually is paint mixing. So imagine how much inventory a paint store would have to carry if they had to carry all the different colors, right? And they actually manufacture on site, right? They have the base and they add the tint. And that is actually, that model has been extremely resilient to other waves of retailing. It works extremely well, and is actually not nearly as present in some other markets outside the US.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, with the success of Amazon and what they're doing, large part of that includes their AI technology. And as experiences are becoming more and more customized, you're going to need AI technologies to help you identify, personalize micro experiences, right? So are you guys seeing a big investment and a race to try to understand implement and execute AI technologies to compete with the Amazons and the Googles of the world?
I can take a crack at that if you don't mind, because I actually started about 4 or 5 years ago. I started to track all of the talent, right? And we were doing that through like LinkedIn searches to see how many people in their LinkedIn profiles identified themselves with working with AI technologies. The big one really has been deep learning, right? When I think about what's really transforming right now has been the connectionist, the deep learning, the neural networks, the ability to kind of sort through massive amounts of data. I thought, okay, deep learning being a subset of machine learning, started to search for where are all the people that are saying that they're working on machine learning or deep learning. And what I saw over the last 4 to 5 years was the top 10 tech companies are really gobbling up all that talent. Yeah, it's just massive growth. When you just look, every time I go on there every month, there's 20% more people who are working for Amazon or Microsoft or Google that are saying or associating on their profile that they're working with these technologies. And for a while I started to get worried for the traditional business, like how is this going to play out, right? If AI is such an advantage for just these top 10 companies. It's kind of the haves and the have-nots. But as I'm working with clients on their AI strategies today, what I'm finding is a lot of these AI technologies are actually procured in the cloud as a service. Some of them you can buy for, and I mentioned this at the board meeting. You could buy sentiment analysis. You can make 1,000 sentiment analysis for 25 cents per 1,000. So it's not necessarily that you actually have to be the ones who are developing it. It's the ones that have to integrate it into your process, have to bring it into your business. So I think we're going to see more ways in which that technology is going to be amalgamated in stores, almost like the App Store, right? There was no apps in the App Store. Now there's 6 million apps in the App Store. And then the big thing is sorting through, well, which apps do you need when and where and which are going to make you the most productive. It's very similar when you look at the Amazon, what they're doing with their skills store, where they're adding 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 skills to Alexa, right? I'm going to buy a skill or I'm going to enable a skill through the skill store. We're seeing that come into the enterprise as well, into the back office and into the front office. We're seeing voice come into it, right? Just voice enable this robotics to actually go and process these changes in our systems or collect these leads from the web. So that's what I'm seeing, at least from a leadership perspective, where leaders are looking, back to the talent question. What is the future of work, and how do we prepare for it? How do we up our digital fitness? And that's really the big thing that we're focused on right now as a firm with our clients. That's kind of the hot topic of the last 6 months is how do I move my whole organization to the place where, hey, if you're in product development or you're in accounting or if you're in marketing, how do I bring these technologies in to make my job more efficient? I've never met anybody who's automated themselves out of a role. They just become more valuable and they help the rest of the team come along. And a lot of these technologies, because the economy is growing, while in certain subsectors we're definitely going to see some impact, particularly when Momentum Machine comes in and handles making all the burgers for a fast food joint, those jobs are definitely going to be impacted. But on the whole, we're seeing productivity gains and people bringing in this technology to kind of help boost what they're doing.
But I'll add to that with Amazon. Don't just think of the skill store and the success of the App Store, but I look at Sun should have figured out renting server space was the future, right? Amazon figured that out. So look at the amount of money they make. There's such high value in the AI. I don't see anybody monopolizing it. That's like saying IBM says there's going to be 1 or 2 computers, right? The value is so great. If Amazon doesn't, Google will, or Microsoft. They're going to offer AI, I think, just exactly as you're saying, as a service, just like we see Amazon Web Services.
We have time for a few more questions. Yes?
I'm looking way into the future, and I'm trying to see how do you David and Goliath concept here. Thank you, Carlos Morgner. I'm looking way into the future, and I'm looking at a David versus Goliath concept, assuming Amazon's the Goliath. And I noticed that they dominate money, transfer of money. So in the United States, it works. In China, with Alibaba, I don't know. And I've heard that Mercado Libre controls South America, Mexico. So looking way ahead, is there a David here that can beat Goliath? And what are the opportunities? And that's really what I'm interested in.
So I'll confess, when I look at the economics of the physical side of Amazon's retail business, put the cloud to one side for a minute, that is really blinking scary. That if you believe online is a very large slug of retail going forward. What are we at today? Mid-teens. It's going to continue to grow to at least 30, right? I think we wouldn't get many disagreement with that. It's very, very hard for other players to compete against Amazon in the online world, right? So in that common goods, online transaction, the scale thing is becoming really, really scary. You might be able to do it with ship from store. You might be able to, but Amazon is still going to be lower cost. And I don't really see how they can be stopped. Now, will they exterminate everybody else? Not necessarily, but I don't see another player of similar size emerging. So I do think you're going to be in these. The ultimate defense is whatever I sell is not for sale on Amazon. And those kinds of players, which is very much on the differentiated side, right, will continue to succeed. If you've got a product that the only place you can buy it is, nick.com, right, then people will still come and buy it. But in that massive common goods, it's really scary. When you look at the economics, it's just you just can't match it. You just can't. They're faster and cheaper. And what are the things that matter? Cost and convenience.
Well, thank you. We are going to be around for questions after. I wanted to thank you all for kind of hanging in here through the Q&A, and I'm going to welcome Bill Allen back up for some closing remarks. Thank you, Bill.
We'll make them very brief. Thank you, Mike. Really, just another round of applause for Rick, Mike, Nicholas, Ellie, and Thomas for sharing such really powerful insights into this important sector of our economy. I trust that all of you will take what you learned today, and if you're anything like me, you learned a lot today, back to your own organizations and use this to make more informed decisions in your own work. But also, please share this with your colleagues, and please use our social media platforms to share this with a broader audience in Los Angeles. The point as we began the day is to enhance our understanding of this economy, to know it before we try and grow it, so that we can have smart growth that enables prosperity to be broadly shared and a more sustainable, vibrant, diverse economy for all the residents of this county well into the future. We're going to convene again in June for the next in our Future Forum series with the future of healthcare on June 27. Please visit our website in the coming weeks for details and registration opportunities. But also, please join me in thanking our sponsors, Cal State Dominguez Hills and PwC, and our hosts here at the Water Garden this morning for making this possible. And to all of our staff at the LAEDC who not only put on this event, but work so hard to deliver our services day in and day out. Thank you to our staff who are here today. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day, and thank again this great group of panelists.